It's LSU, Alabama. Need I say more? Two hated rivals square off in Baton Rouge, Louisiana this Saturday night. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between the Tigers and the Crimson Tide. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Cole Thompson. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag, use promo code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. That's mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get your special welcome offer today. The LSU Tigers and the Alabama Crimson Tide square off in Death Valley on a Saturday night. Playoff hopes are on the line for both sides, as this game certainly feels like, and I think we'd all agree, is a playoff eliminator for each of these two teams. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips. Helping me do so, my good friend Cole Thompson joins me once again. Cole, what's going on? Appreciate you taking the time. And to say I'm excited to break down this matchup with you, this is the game. When you talk LSU, Alabama, it's putting it lightly to say I'm fired up. Cole, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
Les Miles once said, "This is Death Valley, a place where dreams truly come to die on Saturday night." Unless you were Alabama, and then most of the time Alabama would actually win this one. The Death Valley overall voodoo did not carry a lot of weight when Nick Saban was there. In fact, before 2022, when Brian Kelly got the overtime win with Jaden Daniels, the last time that LSU won at Tiger Stadium was back in 2010. So it has been a hot minute since we have seen this matchup, but here's the beauty of it all. It's a new era, the Kalen DeBoer one. Do we finally see history start a new narrative with Brian Kelly? We all were told, judge you in year 3. So far, we're judging Brian Kelly, and the good news is that there still is a shot to go to Atlanta. There's still a shot to go to the college football playoff. There's also a spot where you get eliminated from the postseason conversation altogether on a Saturday night. So who comes out on top? Whose season feels like a wash and kind of a waste? But more importantly, this is one of the unwritten rivalries in college football that does not carry a lot of weight when it comes to state on state. But when you talk to these fans, when you talk about what this game has meant and how many implications for the SEC West title, college football playoff hopes, national championships, we had this game played in New Orleans in 2011 for a shot at the Crystal Ball Trophy itself. You know that this is a game of all games. And we got 3 hours of nonstop smash mouth football between two of the more underappreciated colleges currently that sit in the race for a national championship. Don't look now, Chris Phillips, but both these teams at the end of the day could find their way all the way down to the national championship stage.
Cole, like you mentioned, LSU, Alabama, if you can't get fired up for this one, not just as a fan of either of these two teams, but as a college football fan, as someone that loves the sport, if you can't get fired up for this one, buddy, you don't have a pulse. And Cole, speaking to the hatred, obviously it's mutual. It's felt on both sides. But I had to share this, Cole, and I'll keep it PG for our audience out there. When I went down to LSU and went to the LSU Ole Miss game, I forget exactly what chant it was, or I think what they said on kickoff. You know, everybody's got their go. I think it was like Tiger or something. My buddy who was next to me, who I stayed with down there, who was an LSU alum, he ended every one of those chants, Cole, with and Alabama.
Yep.
They're not even playing Alabama and F Alabama. So, listen, the hatred is for real on both sides, but especially for LSU and years and years and years of frustration against the Crimson Tide. To your point, Cole, this scenario, it kind of reminds me of third Saturday in October a few weeks ago. Just because that one side has owned you doesn't matter. There's a new guy in charge there. Opportunity to set a new tone in the rivalry with a new head man. Either way, this game, local time, kicking off 6:30 p.m. Central on ABC down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at Death Valley. Cole, Alabama is a 3-point favorite in this game. The over-under is set at 58.5. Alabama leads the all-time series 56-27-5. And Cole, the last time these two teams met, of course, was last year. Alabama won that game by a final score of 42-28 when LSU could not stop a nosebleed. I also feel like, Cole, I should mention, who can forget year one of the Brian Kelly era? The last time these two teams played at LSU, it was at Death Valley at night. 32-31 in overtime in a thriller, and that effectively gave LSU the SEC West crown. So certainly when these two teams meet together, you know it's going to be a great game. You know it's going to be a battle, high intensity down on the boot on Saturday night. Cole, you mentioned this, and I want to start here. You mentioned a wash, and it reminded me of this. Is it a bit of a washout on Saturday night? I don't know if you've checked lately, but the weather looks like there's a tropical storm forming that is going to hit the state of Louisiana. And if it is a monsoon, Cole, and we get a rain game, and it's wet, sloppy conditions, who does that benefit more? And dare I say, Cole, why is that team Alabama? Because I feel like it's going to put a premium on the running game. And Cole, at some point, we can't just keep sitting here waiting and saying, is this the week the running game shows up for LSU? Is this the week? It's just not going to, more than likely. Like, this is just a team. They're not built to be an offensive juggernaut running the football. It feels like if it is a wet, sloppy game like it may be, Cole, that kind of plays into the hands of Alabama. But got a long week ahead. You never know. Things can change. The only people wrong more than we are weathermen. But either way, how the weather plays a factor, I think, is going to be really interesting as we get closer to kickoff.
I just think the run game in general is going to play close because when you look at Alabama this year, they have had some struggles underneath Kane Womack. I think more importantly, they've had some struggles defending the run. They've been horrible on third downs at times. They've been horrible at times inside the red zone. They've allowed explosive plays, but their run defense is really what has hindered their success, especially at the line of scrimmage. They rank 64th nationally in run defense, where they rank top 20 in scoring defense, and they rank still top 35 in red zone defense. The problem is that LSU ranks 111th. So that doesn't really bode well. And I mean, I'm saying Alabama is not that great when it comes to running the football compared to years past when you had Najee Harris and Derrick Henry and TJ Yeldon and Kenyon Drake. And you had even a Brian Robinson and you had Damian Harris. But you still have two guys in Jam Miller and Justice Haynes that could easily find creases in the avenue and then blast off for touchdowns. They just got to be able to get those small creases. This is one of those games where if it does be affected by weather, the ground game is going to be essential, and it's more than just a ground game that is headlined by Caden Durham and Josh Williams. It's going to be a ground game that also is headlined by Jalen Milroe on the opposing side. That's the other element that might end up boding in Alabama's favor, is they have a mobile quarterback. But there also is the caveat of when you have a mobile quarterback, it could also lead to more turnovers. Go look at on Sunday against Detroit, the Green Bay Packers. They were trying to scheme up plays for Jordan Love, and there were multiple fumbles in that game because of bad snaps. That could be the case for Alabama, where you're watching a Jalen Milroe slip, ball kind of comes out at the very last second. There's Whit Weeks, the Honky Badger, coming up, making a big-time play, and maybe all you need is one pass from Garrett Nussmeier to Kyron Lacey for 6 points that ultimately decides this outlook. But I do wonder, when is this run game going to attack? When are we going to finally see the ability of Caden Durham not just be really good inside the red zone and put up 3 touchdowns against a lowly Arkansas front seven, but constantly be able to move the sticks, put themselves in third and manageable, and then cross the threshold for a fresh set of downs? What are we going to see from Josh Williams in this game? Because I think that Alabama has finalized and understood that there are great passing attacks. One of them is LSU. They have weapons. They have a personnel that can easily slice and dice you apart. But if you can take them out and force the run game to be a priority, especially in heinous weather conditions, where, again, we can see things change within an instant, it does, I think, eventually benefit a team like Alabama. But I'm not saying that it will. Because, again, Alabama, they're not that great defensively this year. They have their faults. They have their concerns. Maybe this is one where LSU, who also had a bye week, just like Alabama to prepare, has been studying the tape, looking at those small chinks in the armor, looking at those little creases to where they're dialing up Caden Durham, where they're dialing up a Josh Williams, where they have a design run with Garrett Nussmeier. Maybe they're pile driving and pushing a defensive tackle the way they use J.J. Pegues at Ole Miss, just to make sure that they're able to keep the offense on the field and own that time possession. Time possession is going to be a really big asset in this game, Chris.
Side note, Cole, Honky Badger is the best nickname in college football, and you can't convince me otherwise.
Nope.
Sticking with the LSU defense, though, Cole, the thing that jumps out to you from a few weeks ago when they lost in that game to Texas A&M, it almost felt like they were unprepared for Marcel Reed, his running ability. What do we see from the LSU defense? Blake Baker's done a great job. The defense is night and day from last year. I mean, they've done an incredible job. But when it comes to Jalen Miller, the running game, I agree with you, Cole. I think that's a major key in this game is how does LSU scheme up Jalen Milroe defensively? Are they able to stop the quarterback run game and force him into a phone booth essentially to have to step back, make decisions, read the defense, and deliver the football? Like if you're letting him get outside the pocket and the quarterback run game is a big part. I mean, think about it. The best we saw Jalen Milroe this season was earlier in the season against Georgia when I felt like he was utilizing the run game and getting outside the pocket and playing free and kind of loose. And we haven't really seen that since. Again, you saw Marcel Reed get loose, Cole. I just wonder, you got to think LSU is not going to look as unprepared, right? They're going to have 2 weeks to get ready. There's no other quarterback they're thinking about or getting ready for. I would expect, Cole, for the most part, a bounce back defense or a bounce back performance from LSU's defense, just from the standpoint of preparation. I don't think it's going to look so much like, my goodness, they were just caught so off guard by what the opponent's doing offensively. So I think the way that Blake Baker, that defense respond, I'm really excited to see that. And just, you mentioned Whit Weeks, obviously a leader on the defensive side, but after that Texas A&M game, where again, a mobile quarterback gave you so many fits, I mean, you could say it's even greater challenge, Cole, because I mean, Jalen Milroe, one of the best athletes in college football at that position.
It's a challenge because of not only can he beat you with his legs, he can beat you with his arm. And I think that's a major caveat that you didn't have to worry about with Marcel Reed. He went 2 for 2 passing for 68 yards, and one was a 43-yard blast downfield to Noah Thomas. So again, you take away that one play, it's all with the legs in this matchup. But you also have to give in consideration that for the first half and really up until they made the QB switch with Connor Wigman at quarterback, you still saw this, what I would consider under the radar defense that at the beginning of the year was not drawing a lot of positivity because of what they didn't bring in the transfer portal, get to Connor Wigman. They had 4 sacks in the first half, 4 sacks in the first, in the first drives when Connor Wigman was out there. They also had 6 tackles for losses. So they basically said, you're going to have to beat us with a mobile quarterback. That's the only way that we're going to be able to lose this game. And then when they did. And that was another big time deal. Now, there were also some other faults that came into this game to where it was the muff snap on the field goal attempt. There were the missed field goals throughout the game by Ramos. I mean, those are things that definitely played a factor, but it was the mobile quarterback aspect that ultimately was the knife that was twisted and ultimately put them in the grave. But I look right now, I think what's going to be really interesting is, can you affect Jalen Milroe quickly? This has been an Alabama offensive line that in years past would have been probably all benched by Nick Saban just to make a statement. But right now, this is what you have if you're Kalen DeBoer. I mean, there's really not much else you can work with. You don't have a lot of depth. And that was the one fear I had for Alabama going into this season. It wasn't quarterback play. It wasn't a defensive front. It wasn't wide receivers. It was the offensive line. What happens if you lose a starter and you got to turn to somebody that isn't ready? And we've seen it multiple times this year in the South Florida game, in the Georgia game at times, certainly in the South Carolina and the Vanderbilt game. When the offensive line allows Jalen Milroe to be a little bit flustered, he is unfortunately going to throw a pass in double coverage. He's going to feel like he has to rush the throw, and it's going to be 10 yards past Ryan Williams or Jeremy Bernard or Kobe Prentice. And those are going to be areas to where it just feels like, once again, you have those moments where you can get the explosive play and put the dagger away, but you don't. And it allows a team to linger. And it's like when you're trying to be respectful to your opponent in the boxing ring and you don't want to give out the knockout punch because you don't want to see them go to the hospital. Well, they start to gain a little bit of momentum and you're doing all the body shots, but all they need is to have enough strength to get one blow and they're right back in it. And that's where I think that you have to look at if you're Alabama in this game, especially if you're playing against LSU's front seven. You got to be able to strike fast. You got to be able to, I think, put this game away pretty quickly. And you got to make Garrett Nussmeier to have to play catch up from behind to where they're the ones now playing with an up-tempo attack. Because the last thing you can afford to do is be sacked early on, put yourself behind the line of scrimmage, find third and unmanageable, and then eventually all these punts lead to a 14-0 lead for LSU, and you're the one now having to play catch up and beg your defense to get a critical stop.
Cole, you mentioned Garrett Nussmeier. Let's go there. At the risk of sounding as if I'm oversimplifying things in this matchup, because there's so many matchups within the matchups. There's so much cat and mouse here. And is Garrett Nussmeier not going to make those critical mistakes? Yes or no? That'll tell you who wins the football game.
Is he going to capitalize, though, and get those marquee throws? Because that's the other thing. You can make those mistakes as long as you make up for it.
He's the Bayou Brett Favre, Cole. He really is. But the thing is, you're not going to win football games of this magnitude turning the ball over the way he has.
Sure.
And I mean, they're not. I mentioned this about Carson Beck at Georgia. Say this about Garrett Nussmeier. What frustrates you, Cole, is a lot of times it's like, listen, it's one thing for there to be competitive interceptions and a DB makes a great play. Tip your cap, is what it is. Welcome to the SEC. But you know as well as I do, Cole, the thing that frustrates LSU fans, and it should, there are times, I mean, I was at that Ole Miss game in person. We saw this against A&M. He will make the brilliant play. He will make the brilliant throw. But then, Cole, he just at times, you're like, what are you looking at? Like, what was the thought process there? And again, in a game like this, for everything that maybe Alabama, is not compared to years past, they're still Alabama. They're still loaded with top-notch personnel. They're going to come into this game with confidence because guess what? They've won in this building a lot over the years. You cannot make those type of mistakes. I don't care how much you try to make up for it because he will, but you can't make those kind of mistakes and win a ball game of this magnitude against a program of this caliber with what's on the line.
Here's what I will say, though. Can you tell me what is the lowest amount of passing attempts he has had in a game this year?
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm just going to guess, Cole. I'll say 26.
34.
Wow.
They're asking him to throw.
They can't run. They can't run the ball.
But when you have to do that, you have to understand mistakes are going to be a part of the process. It's like Josh Allen in the NFL. You're willing to get a 4-touchdown day with a 2-turnover performance so long as it leads to a victory.
He's like a slugger that bats 250, but he hits 50 homers.
And you're okay with that as long as your OPS is through the roof and you have runners on base.
He's going to throw the picks. I get it, Cole, but like, for example, you're rolling out to your left and you throw back across the middle of the field like he did against A&M. You are taught since Pop Warner not to do. Like, you just can't make those mistakes, right?
And I don't think that he is, especially in the magnitude of this game, because remember, he already has experience playing in this game. Last year, Jaden Daniels went out, so he had to go up against a Nick Saban-led defense. And trust me, his performance was far from manageable. 53 total yards, 0 turnovers, but 0 interceptions in this game too, or 0 touchdowns. When you're asking him to throw that much, you're basically saying, hey, we will accept a turnover if you make up for it with 2 touchdowns. We will accept a bad near pick as long as you connect on a 30-yard blast in the ensuing play. And Alabama's defense at times has allowed the explosive play. They've also been able to come up with the critical interception. They're not going to be fully healthy. We know that. They're going to be down multiple defensive players. They're down part of their secondary right now, which is a big-time deal because of that is where you can attack in the one-on-one matches with Kyron Lacey. But it's also a game to where maybe this is the Chris Hinton breakout performance with the Verts and Aaron Anderson. You have to trust your quarterback in these type of matchups to not be afraid to uncork one and just place it to where nobody else knows where it's going to go besides the wide receiver. And they did that. They showed you how confident they are in a guy like Garrett Nussmeier to be the Nuss Bus, to be QB1, to be the X factor on a 4th and 5 call where they say, hey, just get us the first down. Screw that. Joe Sloan says, Verts, let's go for the end zone. Go for the jugular on this play. And Aaron Anderson made a play that could only be made by a wide receiver by a perfectly timed throw. You don't remember those 2 interceptions. You forget about those 2 interceptions because if you remember the moment that where your season turned around. And that's what Garrett Nussmeier can do in a game like this, where he can have a bad break on the opening drive. You watch as you watch as Malachi Moore comes away with a big-time interception. You watch as maybe a Devonta Smith gets a big-time stop with a PBU. And then in the 4th quarter, he makes up for it on a beautifully run route by a Xavier Thomas, by a CJ Daniels, by a Kyron Lacey, by a Mason Taylor, even for that matter. Back of the end zone, easy 6 points. He is a hero down in Baton Rouge, and Tiger Land is partying its ass off. Those are things that you can see from Garrett Nussmeier, and the trust factor is there with this offense, especially when it's late in the game and they need a quick strike. They know that Nuss can be as advertised. He's already shown it once, and he'll do it again.
You rattle off those names, Cole. I think if Garrett Nussmeier does play well and limits the mistakes, like I think LSU's got more offensive firepower than Alabama does. I don't know.
Yeah, but do they have a Ryan Williams, who's 17 years old? He's the new.
They don't have a guy that's 17 years old on the outside making plays like that. I can assure you. But I mean, I mean, again, you mentioned them. Kyron Lacey, Xavion Thomas, Aaron Anderson, Chris Hilton's back. I mean, they've got plenty of weapons to give Alabama fits. It's just, are they going to have any semblance of balance in the running game? And the answer is probably no, because they haven't. And what's crazy is that hasn't stopped them. I mean, it's wild to think how good they are and how productive they are, even with the lack of running game they've had. So it's going to be an all-out battle, Cole. I'm expecting a classic hit again. That being said, Cole, one more thing before we dive into our predictions. Because one of the things I'm going to mention, and we mentioned top of this, it's Death Valley at night. Cole, how much does that matter in this matchup? I mean, realistically, does that carry the same weight as if it were a different opponent? Because again, you can look at it you can look at it from many different angles. All right, this is a new Alabama. This isn't Nick Saban's Alabama, right? Think about how massive too, Cole. This is a big game for Kalen DeBoer. I mean, no doubt. It's Alabama. Every game is big. The locals are going to be extremely restless. If you go 9-3, miss the playoff, we get the expectations there. But Cole, hear me out here. Fairly or unfairly, this is a definer for Brian Kelly. Because you know what the headlines are going to say on Sunday morning, on Monday. Can't win the big one. He can't win the big one. He's Les Miles all over again. 9-3. 9-3 gets you fired at LSU. It'll get you fired in Tuscaloosa too. We just haven't had to have that conversation in like 20 years. But
well, it's also year one. So let's.
And it's also year one, right? We're not even talking about. But yeah, judge me off year 3. Judge me off year 3, he said. Buddy, it's year 3 and it's Alabama at home at night. I mean, it's a definer. This is going to define LSU's season, essentially. I know there's more football after this, but Cole, this is the one right here. This is the one right here that's going to define it all for Brian Kelly and this LSU football team and this program moving forward.
If you were to tell me, looking back at Nick Saban's tenure in his final year at the Crimson Tide, there were still flaws, multiple flaws with this organization, and there were penalties and there were miscues, and the offensive personnel was far from advertised in years past, and it was a problem. But the difference is that Nick Saban would never lose to a Vanderbilt. He also would find a way to get a win when a lot of people were doubting him. There is a lot of goodwill that can come from Kalen DeBoer, proving that he is the guy with a win in this game. Yeah, you lost to Vanderbilt, and yes, you lost to Tennessee in the third Saturday in October, but Nick lost the last time he went up to Neyland Stadium. That's something that you have to say. The very last time that Nick Saban ever played at Rocky Top was with a loss. So the first time that Kalen DeBoer plays there, it's a loss. Okay, you get good graces back when you win in Baton Rouge and Death Valley on a Saturday night in November, as you have for years. Nick Saban, the last time that he went into Death Valley in the month of November, lost. Change a bit of a narrative. You get to gain back those good graces. So it is a big time game for Kalen DeBoer. And also, this is a playoff eliminator. Fans still believe that when they brought back Jalen Milroe, when they added in some key pieces on the offensive line, when they went and they added in, and they didn't lose as much as the star power talent at Alabama's defense, they were going to be good. They brought in former head coaches that were willing to take demotions to be a part of a winning mentality program that has a shot of hoisting up a national championship. And the entire enigma that was, well, we're not regrouping. We're just replacing a coach and we're continuing the same story. That's all still ahead of you. And that will carry a lot of weight. The way that you played last week and came off the mat, especially with a very unhealthy, I think for my money, Jalen Milroe, and still got a double-digit shutout performance against Missouri, carries a lot of weight. Does that carry on in? And with the win, what does that do for you for the rest of the year? You still got a game against Oklahoma on the road. You still got a game in the Iron Bowl. Your first of your Kalen DeBoer. But you win those games, as we've talked about with other programs, they don't make schedules equally. They also don't look at logos equally. That script day, knowing what the boosters, knowing what the ratings, knowing what people will say if down goes Bama at home in the first round of the inaugural 12-team college football playoff, that's going to mean something to people. So this for you, as long as you don't shoot yourself in the foot down the line, this may be your ticket to getting right back into the college football playoff. And more importantly, this might be your ticket for Kalen DeBoer to buy back some of that good graces. Nobody else is going to look at Alabama's resume and say, well, they lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to a really good Tennessee defense. But those wins against the number 1 team in Georgia and on the road in Death Valley on a Saturday night against a top 15 LSU squad, they don't matter. People are going to pay attention to that. I think a lot of people are going to be paying attention to how Kalen DeBoer and this offense can respond, how Alabama can carry itself after a bye week. Are they mentally mature enough to play in an environment, a place that I call the ultimate cathedral of chaos, literally Vatican City of college football?
So, Cole, with that being said, let's go ahead and lock in our predictions. I'll start for this one. Again, LSU, Alabama, the stage is set. You don't really even need to hype up this one. And if you're not excited, you don't have a pulse. This is one, Cole. I think number one, keeping an eye on the weather is going to be important. How does that factor into the game? It could be some really wet, sloppy conditions on Saturday night in Death Valley. I think styles make fights, and I think that impacts the style of this game. I think, again, there's going to be a big emphasis. I think they're still going to try to throw the football, right, even if it is wet conditions, but going to put more of an emphasis on the running game. I do think that actually favors Alabama, what they can do. Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, Jalen Milroe with the quarterback run game. That's not a facet of the game LSU has, right? Garrett Nussmeier is not exactly fleet of foot, and they just, for whatever reason, have not been able to establish a running game. Great in pass pro, but haven't been able to establish the running game. So I think weather is something to keep an eye on in this football game. You mentioned a playoff eliminator, Cole. That's exactly what it is. I don't have to justify how big of a game it is for both sides, but we mentioned the Kelly aspect, year 3, Kalen DeBoer. This is your first one. Alabama fans ain't used to losing to LSU. It don't matter where the game is being played, especially in Baton Rouge. You've had a lot of success there over the years, although you lost. You mentioned Nick Saban. Lost his last game on Rocky Top. He lost his last game in Death Valley, too. So kind of an interesting side note there. Coming out of the bye week, you mentioned both of these teams with an opportunity to reset, to refocus, to, get ready to put their best foot forward because they remember November, right? We've talked about that with some other previews we've done, and just that is a consensus across college football. They remember November. It's funny how early season losses, hey, you go beat LSU, well, the Vandy loss still sucks, but you're not going to be thinking about that nearly as much if you're Alabama if you go out there and you beat LSU. Cole, I got to be honest with you, man. Garrett Nussmeier, if you told me he doesn't turn the football over, I would tell you LSU for sure gets his victory. Can I trust him to not turn the football over? Cole, I'd be surprised if he didn't have one. I might be surprised he didn't have two. Now, to your point, can he overcome it, make those big throws, make those big plays? We'll see. The Bayou Brett Favre, you just never know what you're going to get from this dude. Although I do love the personnel they have, obviously the weapons. I think they can win a lot of those battles on the outside with Alabama, make it really, really tough on Kane Womack in that defense, who talk about trust issues. Kane Womack, hello, welcome to the preview. I'll tell you this, though, Cole, as skeptical or as much trust issues as I have with Garrett Nussmeier, I don't really know how I feel about Kalen DeBoer's Alabama. And I'll take it a step further when I say that. This is all due respect to the Alabama Script A, the Crimson Tide, the great people of Tuscaloosa, who I had a great time with. Cole, you're a proud alumni of them. Great people there in Tuscaloosa. I got nothing against you. But for what I've seen, and Kalen DeBoer and his Alabama, and I know these were issues when Nick Saban was there, but the lack of discipline and just the way some things look, Cole, we talk about Death Valley at night. Does that matter as much in this game because of Bama's success? I don't know that a game that happened 10 years ago really plays a whole lot of factor in what happens in this one on Saturday night. College game day, by the way, going to be in town. The intensity will be there. It'll be that environment I experienced for Ole Miss times about 1,000, which was crazy. I went on full record and talked about that ad nauseum about how incredible the environment was, and it felt like a spiritual experience at Death Valley. It'll be more of the same. Cole, I don't think Kalen DeBoer's Alabama is man enough to go into Death Valley and win at night. I just don't. From what I've seen from them, I don't believe them. I don't trust them. I think Kalen DeBoer is a fine football coach, but he is not Nick Saban. And there's a lot of people that when Nick Saban hung it up, that were keeping tabs that said, all right, it's time for us to get ours. That's kind of how I felt with the game when they went into Knoxville against Tennessee. They said, hey, you've had years and years of futility, but Nick Saban ain't on the sideline anymore. It's a new era of this rivalry. You can write a new chapter starting today. I think LSU understands that assignment as well. I think LSU understands that. And again, I do not think Kalen DeBoer's Alabama has the gall, has the stones to go into Death Valley on a Saturday night and do what is necessary to win this football game. Give me LSU 27, Alabama 24, wet, sloppy night at Tiger Stadium, but a spiritual experience unlike any other. I think LSU gets the win. And again, been a lot of folks keeping tabs on Bama and been waiting their turn to get their shot and get some revenge. I think LSU does that, and just like 2022, they get the win. They knock Bama out of the playoff discussion, and LSU in year 3 of Brian Kelly keeps their playoff hopes alive.
For me, this really comes down to two main elements. Let's start off with the first one. It's quarterback play. It is. What version of Jalen Milroe is going to take the field? What version of Garrett Nussmeier is going to take the field? Because you're allowed to make several mistakes, and it won't come back to bite you so long as you capitalize and recoup, readjust, and find your way into the end zone. Unfortunately, in games like this, the person who makes the last mistake may be the one that walks away with an L. So who is the person that makes the last mistake? And is it something as simple as a muffed handoff when it comes to the running back? Is it something as simple as going and sliding too early? Is it something as complicated as throwing off your back foot, trying to hope that it lands in the right hands? It's batted up in the air 3, 4, 5 times, then lands in a defensive back for a turnover. What is it? But the person who makes the last mistake will be the one that goes away with an L. And the other thing, this is a game that when you think about for years has been a very, very, very easy game to predict. It comes down to physicality. It comes down to who wants it more and who is going to punch more. Who is going to claw and fight and push their way forward for that extra yard? Who is going to pile drive their legs into the ground and stretch their body while getting jabbed in the ribs for a touchdown, crossing that goal line? Who is going to deliver the hit of all hits like a Reuben Foster against Leonard Fournette that makes the entire stadium shake? Who's going to be that guy? Because it's all about the physicality in this game. Brian Kelly has got to get this win because Brian Kelly has said, judge me in year 3. We're judging you. You lost to USC in week 1. You need an ultimate comeback and a little bit of help from refs to make sure you got that win against South Carolina in week 3. You lost to Texas A&M because it didn't feel like you prepared for a mobile quarterback. Now you have a mobile quarterback 2.0 that you get to go up against. We're judging you now. We have to judge you because you said for us to. And the minor mistakes will outweigh the major caveats. They will. I believe LSU is a playoff team. I really do believe LSU is a playoff team. I believe that Alabama has yet to show you why they are a playoff team. And you brought this up, Chris, and it's very fair to say. I think every Alabama fan that has ever existed would agree that this version of the Crimson Tide, the one that we have seen play down the level of competition at times to opponents, certainly not looked its best and allow a team like South Carolina to hang on too long, not be able to reassess itself in enough time to regroup and respond when they have a turnover against Tennessee, when they have an opportunity against Georgia, when they have an opportunity against Vanderbilt. All that being said, they haven't shown you who they truly are. And it's a Kalen DeBoer-led team that isn't. But not tonight. Not this one. You're not watching Jalen Milroe go home and take an L. He's going back to the playoff. You're not watching Ryan Williams drop a pass that he knows can be a catch. You're not watching Kalen DeBoer hear the doubt and the dismay and all of the negativity surrounding him as a coach. The man is a proven winner. Look him up wherever he has been. He has shown you why he is the right guy. And the aura and the energy that has not been on display so far down in Titletown, USA, since that second quarter against Georgia, it's a game that he understands that college football fans from Boise, Idaho, to Bismarck, North Dakota, to Kalamazoo, Michigan, to Daytona, Florida, all appreciate It is something about LSU and Alabama on a Saturday night in a place where dreams come to die. And more often than not, when that script day is marching on into Tiger Stadium, the only dream that is dying is LSU's chances of winning a national title. It's LSU's chances of getting a representative to the Heisman Trophy presentation. And it's LSU not being able to say, we have Alabama's number. It's a new coach. It's the same standard. Alabama 24. LSU 20. Kalen DeBoer wins back the Crimson Tide faithful.
So, guys, do you agree with me? Do you agree with Cole? LSU and Alabama squaring off Saturday night in Death Valley. Who comes out on top in Baton Rouge? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. For Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.